going to learn a little bit of the history of this part of the world. And quite looking forward to this. A few announcements. I unfortunately have to tell you that our treasurer has found it necessary to resign. Kirk Chittick has become just too busy a family man, and he is quite young. So we will be looking for someone who's not quite so young, or perhaps without family, demanding, who would be able to take on the duties of treasurer.
You qualify for that, Michael?
I've done that bit. I wasn't very good at it either. It was a great find to find Kirk. That is a sad announcement. Here is a much happier one. We would like to announce that next month's meeting of the Lakefield Historical Society will be held on Thursday, November the 27th at 7 p.m. and will be reminiscent of a traditional village Christmas. This will be our last presentation before Christmas, and we hope you will be able to join us as we enjoy a reading of the olden days coat written by one of Canada's famous novelists, Margaret Lawrence, as presented by Brenda Neal. We will also have the opportunity to enjoy some old-time Christmas music by Duro Fiddlers, Kevin Leahy, Bernard Sullivan, Jim Sloan, and guests. We get the whole family? If you are interested in bringing a traditional family Christmas treat to share, please sign up at the back of the room before leaving this evening. A special invitation is extended to children and grandchildren for this special evening. We invite you to come out to celebrate in traditional village Christmas fashion. And if you wish to join our group as a member, please come up to the front sometime during the evening. And or if you wish to renew your membership, that would be possible. And I think we might now proceed with Goldie Payne. That was my first question. How did you get the nickname? Well, it's pretty simple. She was Gold Elaine Defoe. So, got shortened. Got shortened. And I had the pleasure last week of going over to Goldie's house on Ermatinger Street.
No, Clemente.
Clemente. Well, they were both Lakefield. with Bruce, and we spent a pleasant hour talking about the life and times of Goldie. And I'm really quite looking forward to hearing what she is going to tell us tonight. And we might start, Goldie, if you would, with your early life at home on the farm as Goldie Lane Defoe.
Well, I was born in 1918 near Havelock. My parents lived on a farm. I attended public school, Victoria, SS number 3. My teachers were Miss Damon and Miss Burgess. I got grade 8, I went to grade 8, and then they had a continuation there at the school, and I took grade 9. But when I was growing up on the farm, I milked 5 cows and then walked to school and walked home.
Uphill all the way.
Yeah.
I also helped on the farm during the haying season. I drove the horse on the
Horse and wagon.
no the
Dump rake.
what?
Dump rake?
The dump rake.
There's my yeah.
Thank you.
And then I in 19 I left home in met Goldie Payne in he was born in 1915, and I lived in Warsaw, and we made good friends, so then I haven't saw him for quite a while, and then in 1942 I went to Peterborough to work, and from then on, it was the history. Married in 1944.
And you might tell us how many children?
I have 3, and the day I got married, I got a pain, and I've had it ever since. I enjoyed the pain. I have 3 children, and without their tender loving care, I wouldn't be heading for 91. When I went to Peterborough, I worked in Zellers for 3 years, and then after we were married and I had the children, we moved to Lakefield, and we bought a house on Committee Street with an extra lot. And my children's name is Keith, Bruce, and Brenda. And the house we bought on Nelson Street was soon too small, and then so we built a new house on Committee, down on our lot on Committee. I used to work at Jack Ryan's, and at the Piper Dollar Store, and I walked everywhere, to shop, to church, to the post office, and to skate. Orville was a founding member of the Lakefield minor hockey. Bruce played.
That's okay. Yeah.
And I'm a great hockey fan. I love hockey. I never played it. All I know, I can tell when the puck goes in. And I like baseball. And I live in the house that we bought. Or no, I live in, what was that?
You live in the house that you and Dad built?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've lived there for almost 60 years. And it says here, I'm very independent. I didn't say that. I take interest in the parades on Clementi Street. There used to be some lovely parades, and the school children and the traffic to the flea market near the fairground. And I remember the parades, which often included Dr. Castle and his horses. Thank you.
She might be able to elicit a little more information about hockey and grandchildren.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about grandchildren.
When you first moved to Lakefield, when you and Dad first moved to Lakefield, my brother Keith was 2 years old. I had just been born in Peterborough. Brenda wasn't here yet. And when you first moved to Lakefield, to 33 Nelson Street, who were the people that lived there who you bought the house from? Do you remember that?
Oh, I can't remember.
Silas Robinson?
No, we sold
Oh,
our
you sold it to Robinson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Millie and Silas.
Right. And there was no, well, everybody would know,
It was
there was no plumbing at that time. It was outdoor plumbing.
some relation to Eva Hendren. Jim Hendren and somebody, I think, owned the house.
Yeah, I remember growing up in that neighborhood, and I remember that they used to come around and clean out the outhouses. That was quite a thing to watch.
We were still doing that in the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah. I was up watching them.
Hey, Bruce, you used to call him the Honeydew Man.
That's right. Gordon Martin.
Gordon Martin and the Honeydew Man.
Yeah, I remember watching them.
I asked Mom the other day about
about the house, and she said, well, she loved that, they loved that little house because it had an inside pump and a two-holer.
Well, what did you do for spending money? You used to have the odd little job?
I guess.
You used to deliver avons
Oh, yeah, I used to do it
all over the village,
from the Maples to the
girls' school.
girls' school. And I'd take the orders, and when they came in, Orville would drive me around to the village.
Yes. Now, you have grandchildren. Do you know how many you have?
3. No, yes, 6.
6 grandchildren.
I had 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and I got 6 great-grandchildren.
My oldest brother Keith has 2 kids, Jeff and Shelley. And Jeff has never married. Shelley has 2 sons. They live in Millbrook. Jeff lives just south of Peterborough. And myself, I have 2 sons. And our oldest son had his first son just a year and a half ago. And then Brenda, who married Woody, they have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And Dan has a daughter, and their Brenda's daughter Cindy married Guy. They have a boy and a girl. So Mom was quite proud of her kids and her grandkids and her great-grandkids.
Goldie, you might tell us about the jobs that Orville had in Peterborough when you first married
Yes, he
him and
worked
met
at
there.
Selkirk's clothing store, and I worked in Zellers.
Yeah.
So then he thought he'd make something better than that, so he quit there and he moved to Lakefield, and he worked for Beecher Blake at the grocery store. Then he got sick of that, and Ed Barton started the ice cream place there on where Hamlin's is, and he got in there. He used to make the ice cream. Then they went out of business, and he went back to Peterborough. He got some more work at the bake shop, delivering bread.
Trent Valley Bakeries.
Oh, yeah.
How did he deliver the bread, Goldie?
The horse and wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the boys used to go with him on Saturdays.
Yeah. We used to go with them on Saturdays.
Brenda used to.
He worked at Trent Valley Bakeries till 1960 or 61. And I think it was either 60 or 61. And it was Halloween night. And he was working late, it was dark. And he had a terrible accident with he was driving his truck at that time. And he was down in Baileyborough area. And come up over a hill and met 2 young lads who had stolen their mother's car. And they were out joyriding, head on the top of a hill, and they had no license. And Dad was in hospital for quite some time, and he just couldn't continue with that. So he was very fortunate to get a job with the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, working out of Lakefield. They had just built the store in Lakefield. And he was lucky to get that job, and he continued with that until 1983 when he retired. And unfortunately, 81. He worked till 81, and he retired in 81, and in 83 he passed away. He worked too hard after he retired.
He must have signed my permit book. You remember that? Everything you bought was listed in the little book.
Yeah. No, he worked too hard at his hobby, which was gardening. And he just spent his life, well, ever since he was growing up on the farm, gardening was in his blood, and when he retired, that's what he wanted to do, but I think it was the wrong choice. He should have taken up fishing.
Well, we lived in Selwyn, and we had 10 acres of gardening property, and he would use one end of the garden to plant potatoes and turnip. And he would, in the fall, when he'd take them all out, he would wax those turnips. He would grade his carrots according to size, and then he donated the potatoes and the turnip and the carrots to different churches that would have their fowl suppers. Because, I mean, nobody could have ever used that much turnip and potatoes. But yes, he loved to garden, and that was one thing I always wish I had listened more to his gardening tips, because he knew them all. I wish I had learned to knit from my mother, because my mother was an avid knitter.
Not too late yet.
All of our, yeah, all of our kids had, you know, the Mary Maxim sweaters and the hats, and a lot of knitting.
And it's not a very well known fact, but we actually had a brother. Keith and I and Brenda had a brother. Mom was at home, and the next door neighbors, Betty and Gord Galvin, had a son, Danny, and basically Mom raised him. Gord and Betty,
He was 3 months old.
yeah, Gord and Betty both had jobs, and full-time jobs, so they got Mom to look after Danny. She'd get up in the morning at 20 to 7 or so. She'd go over, she'd get the Galvins off to work, get their breakfast, get Danny's breakfast. She'd come back over to our place, which was just next door across the yard, get us up, get our breakfast, get us off to school, and then she'd look after Danny for the day. We'd be home at lunch. She'd have her lunch ready for us. We'd be home at supper, and she'd have her supper ready for us. She'd have the Galvins' supper ready for them when they got home at 5 o'clock.
Lucky
And,
neighbors.
yeah, oh yeah. And then the next day, started all over again. But we basically had little brother and Danny Galvin. Because he was at our place as much as he was at his own.
He never had any sisters or any other family.
No, no. We played with him just like he was a member of the family.
He came all the way from.
All the way from Strathmore, Alberta, for Mom's 90th birthday in September. Yeah. As did our brother Keith. He came from Edmonton for Mom's birthday. Danny comes for birthdays and weddings, whenever he can get here, he comes. He's very, very successful. I guess you'd call him a financial consultant. And
He's having interesting days right now.
yes, very interesting days. Yeah, it'll be more interesting on Tuesday with the election. Yes.
Bruce, tell us about the toboggan ride down the river road behind the car. Who bit the chunk out of the back bumper of the car?
Wait, Dad, I don't know where Dad got that old bobsleigh, but it was it had, well, it was a plank. I think it was probably 12 to 14 inches wide, and it was at least 10 to 12 feet long. It had a steering wheel, a car steering wheel on it, and it had bobsleds on the front and the back. And you could put about 6 or 8 people on it, kids anyway. And Dad used to tow it behind the car. We'd go down the river road. I remember going out to the center line of Smith one time, and there was a big hill there between County Road 18 and the Selwyn Road now. And Dad would pull the bobsleigh up to the top, and then there'd be 4 or 5 kids get on the bobsleigh, and away we'd go. And it would travel for a mile. Driving it with a steering wheel, out of a car. And then he'd follow us down the road in the car and pick us up and tow us back up.
But Mom was at the other end watching for cars.
I don't remember going down the river road, Keith.
Did somebody lose some teeth?
Not me. I've lost them since, but
I thought somebody took a bite out of the back bumper there, some cow right across the road. Or had to jam the brakes on, and the brakes didn't work on the sleigh.
no, they didn't have very good brakes on the sleigh. No, I fell off a motorcycle down the river road one time. Not on the bobsleigh.
Goldie, last week you talked about walking down to the skating rink. Which skating rink? Or which ones?
That one over there.
Well, it's always been in the same place.
No.
Well, the one that we went to
Yeah.
was in there.
Yeah.
But where was the other one?
The old arena is where the Dixie Lee or where the bowling alley is
Oh,
now.
right, yeah. Well, that was
Yeah.
long.
I remember of us being to a hockey game the night before that one blew down.
The roof caved in.
Yeah.
And we had pop or something drinking, and the cups were still sitting on the ledge. Next day, when it was closed up.
That was in 1972 that the arena fell down. When they rebuilt the arena, well, Dad being one of the founding members of the Lakefield Minor Hockey, he never did hold a position on the executive, other than he was just on the executive, but he was their top ticket seller. He could sell a ticket to anybody for anything. And the job that he had in the liquor store, you know, everybody coming in and buying a bottle of liquor for $6 and $8, well, 50 cents or 25 cents for a ticket was nothing, so he could sell a ticket to anybody.
Bruce, was that a snowfall, a heavy snowfall that made it cave in that time?
Snow and wind.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was Valentine's Day, I think, in 72.
And so fortunate it was the middle of the night.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So fortunate, yes, because there had
Yeah,
been a
It
tournament
looked like the
there.
construction of that thing. It's a wonder it didn't go down there much earlier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was just held together with pins and needles.
Yeah, it was. And as most of the arenas around here were.
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
were all built the same
They
way.
were all built the same way by the same company about the same time, from the early 50s till the mid-50s. They built dozens of them all over Ontario. Yep.
Wasn't it something to do with the snow all being blown off one side of the
Yep.
roof?
Probably.
Yeah, it was just, yeah, the old arena sat in exactly the same place that this one does. It's just that there wasn't a whole lot of snow, but it was the wind that brought the snow over the roof and compacted it and kept that circular effect, and just kept laying it on layer after layer.
Same thing as the snow fence.
Yeah, exactly the same thing, yeah.
I wonder if anybody heard it go when it went down.
Well, I'm sure there were houses quite close.
Yeah.
I never did hear
It
it, but
made quite a noise.
I never did hear, but I know they sold, one of the little gimmicks they had for making money for that, building the new arena was, they sold blocks. And I don't know who came up with the idea, whether it was Judge Collins or somebody came up with the idea, but Dad had I guess they gave him the job of selling blocks. And you could buy a cement block and make a donation of $2 or whatever. And you could buy blocks of blocks, you could buy 10 blocks, you could buy 20 blocks. And then they took the idea that maybe they should recognize the people that made contributions. So Dad got a girl in town, Mary Kidd, and she got a huge 4x8 sheet of plywood, painted it white, and then made little blocks and put names. Anybody who made a donation or bought a block, they put their name on it. And it was on display up at the new arena when it was opened. That was quite an adventure for Dad to take that on. I know Mom helped them. They sorted through names and tickets, and we better put this name here. We need 6 spaces for this name, family names.
One other thing we did as a family, well, Mom anyway, Dad not so much, was we had a paper route. We delivered papers right from the edge of Lakefield, coming into Lakefield, from Peterborough, right to the bridge. And right from, we used to do what used to be the kids' farm, right down to the Marshland Center. And Keith and Bruce and I, and well, I was only about 5 or 6 if I remember then, and I think I had 7. But Mom would stand on the corner and watch me. And when it rained, she still came along and carried papers with us. I think we had 90-some papers altogether.
Yeah, Keith did, I guess what you'd call south of the highway, and I did north of the highway. I did Dr. Gassel. In fact, I see one of my customers sitting there in the back, Wendy Nichols. Yep, the last house at the end of the park. And one of my first customers was Dr. Bean's house. That was my first customer, and then I went down Commandy Street, did the side streets in between Dane Court, right down to the end of the park.
I used to love on collection day, go with Bruce. Keith used to save his money, but I'd go with Bruce. And there was a store, it was Shepherd's store, down by Kingdon Lumber. And he'd always go in there and buy penny candy. And so I used to love to go with Bruce on collection day.
You mentioned last week walking to church.
Yeah. To church. Well, we didn't have a car, so I had to. We didn't have a room for a horse.
Couldn't get a horse and buggy in the spare bedroom, no.
I know that for 25 happy years, my mother and father lived beside Goldie in the house that they had moved to when they first came to Lakefield.
Yeah.
I guess you didn't have Dad for all 25, but you had Mom for 25.
She used to get your dad in that little car she had, and they drive all the way to Florida.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also sailed to Florida.
Yeah.
Anything else, Bruce?
What about the fairgrounds? Was there activities in the fairgrounds? You live up in that area.
There was a lovely fair that used to be a lot bigger than this now.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with the timing of the fair. Back when I was growing up, it was a fall fair,
Yes.
and we used to, I think it was usually about the second or third week of September, just after we went back to school. And it was, everybody looked forward to the Lakefield Fair. Now it's in July, August. Used to be in August, now it's in July, so I think the timing has, well, it hasn't ruined the Lakefield Fair, but it's just taken away, I think, from some of the character of the Lakefield Fair. Used to be one of the best fall fairs, now it's mediocre, I think. But anyway.
But you still enjoy watching the people go up there every Sunday.
Oh,
Yeah, well, Mom sits out on her front step with the weather's cooperating, especially when the fair is on. She loves to watch the old cars go for the demolition derby. The before and after.
That's the only day of the year that you can park on my mother's grass. It's Lakefield Fair weekend.
Everybody's welcome, full in the park, no charge.
What was the relationship between Orville and Purse Payne? Because Purse was in the clothing business. Were they cousins?
They were cousins. yeah.
Cousins?
Yeah. I'm not just sure, well, there were quite a few Paynes in Lakefield.
Yeah.
Frank
yes.
Payne, insurance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Payne.
First Payne, Warren Payne.
Levi Payne had our house. His
Yeah.
house built for him, Levi from
Yeah.
Warsaw.
Well, he's the original Payne.
Is he?
Levi, I think, yeah. Arrived here in 1832. I think I'm probably about the 8th or 9th generation Payne.
Where did they come from originally?
From England. I'm not, well, if Neil was here, Neil could tell us.
Yeah.
Neil Watson. He's been over and researched it. Yes?
Mrs. Payne, if her father-in-law was Rolly Payne.
No, her father-in-law was Cephas Payne, Roland's brother. There were about 6 Payne boys. There was Cephas, Roland, Luther,
Eddie,
Eddie, yeah,
John.
and John.
I wanted to mention that Goldie Payne was quite a carpenter and built barns.
He
Sure
built
did.
our house.
He built Mom's house.
In
He had his son Clarence.
1927, the house and barn on the Sullivan Road where my grandparents lived was burnt to the ground. And Goldie Payne came and put the barn up. And it was quite a ordeal to build that size of a barn, but he came and put it up. And
Yeah.
he was a very good carpenter.
He was an excellent carpenter. Yeah.
Where's
Yeah.
where your mom and dad married?
Where?
Where?
In Peterborough.
In Peterborough.
Yeah.
I wondered if they were married in Lakefield.
No, they were married in Peterborough. And I think at the, we're married up on Bolivar Street, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I live on Bolivar Street in Peterborough. And Mom and Dad were married at a house at the end of the street that I live on now.
It was,
And- Oh, Clint.
Clint.
Yeah, Clint Payne owned the house.
I
Bruce,
was,
and Goldie,
There he
in
is,
May
right
of
there.
1831, the Watson family came to Dummer from Ireland. And we had several young girls with our family, and they rented a house in the southeast corner of George and Charlotte Street, which was a house then, and stayed there. And the rest of the family, the boys, went out to Dummer, and they stayed with Levi Payne until they built their shanty. And they were always kind of upset because the Paynes took up most of the bed. Now, do you know, Goldie, did that happen in your time too? No, they were more sharing in your day. Oh, thank you.
I didn't see you come in, Neil.
you could have been talking about
I usually do. Take your pills today?
Main Street. What can you remember about
Yeah,
the Main
Main
Street?
Street.
The businesses
Remember
on the Main
on the
Street.
post office, or Main Street?
Where did you shop? Where did you buy your groceries?
When you first came?
Lakes, on the corner, with little Gordy with the apron on?
It wasn't down where the IJ is.
Oh, no. Is where the clinic,
Yeah.
where the clinic is? Yeah. They're still in the basement there. There's still shelves with tomato soup, mushroom soup written on where they stored the extra stock.
The tins aren't still there, are they?
No, but it was like they had inventory control. That was what it was called. They wrote up there the shelf in the basement, the extra stock. Yeah. Was the road, was the road gravel and
Yeah, our street was
all gravel?
all gravel, yeah. Yeah, I remember getting quite a few road rashes from
Yeah.
Nassau Street and Clementi Street. Used to really enjoy it when they would tar and chip the streets, and then you could take your bike out and ride, and made a beautiful mess.
Then the turpentine came out.
Yeah, fortunately, every once in a while you'd fall.
I wanted to share one other story with you, Goldie, about Orville. Now, you know Orville, before he started working in the liquor store, he worked for Trent Valley Bread. You remember that? And he took over a route in Norwood. And he peddled on, he knew my in-laws in Norwood quite well. But before he took over the route, the driver before him with Trent Valley Bread had hit a cat and killed the cat. And my wife, who was an innocent young child at those times, but she and her friends used to gather around, and when poor Orville, who had nothing to do with it, would come out, they'd say, Trent Valley Cat Killer, Trent Valley Cat Killer. So I thought that if she could only be here tonight, she would call an amnesty. I don't think it was really fair to Orville.
Yep.
Just wanted to ask Mrs. Payne if she ever remembers cattle and horses going down the street in Lakefield from the railway station at the other end down here when they come in on carloads and they walk right down and out into the country and or coming in from the country. Does she ever remember that happening?
You probably don't remember seeing cattle or livestock being driven through the streets of Lakefield? No. No, see, we didn't arrive in Lakefield until 48, and I don't think it would have happened prior to that.
I arrived in 28, and I can remember them.
Herb McConkie, who he lives near the Westview Point Road. Ed Newsom is on his farm now, and he had relatives in Western Canada, and they would send a carload of horses down to his cousin Herb, and they'd come to Lakefield on a box car, and they would take the horses off and they'd walk them out to where Ed Newsom lives on the Westview Point Road, we call it, and he would sell them to the local farmers, but they'd walk them right through the street, and like they'd have other people on horseback to look after them.
I don't remember that.
Since this man has told a story, I just want to tell one story about that in Lakefield, and maybe you say you don't remember the horses, but Herb McConkie sold a team of horses to his cousin Warnie Nichols. I don't know, some of the people are Nichols here tonight. And in the Depression, there were a lot of people lost their farms, very hard-working people, but someone would hold a mortgage on it, and they'd take the farm.
Come and get my horses that were around about the Melody Inn. I said, no, not my horses. They had belonged to a Mr. Towns.
Oh.
A little bit more about the hockey, Bruce, do you think?
Well, not a whole lot I can say. I remember when I was growing up, I didn't start playing hockey until I was pee-wee when I started. And Mr. Wasson was one of the best coaches I ever had. But at that time, there was no minor hockey to speak of. It was just a bunch of volunteers who got together every year, and we had, we didn't have a house league like they have now, where there's hundreds of kids playing. It was just a select few kids who got to play hockey, if you were good enough. And then they had volunteers, coaches, managers, drivers who used to drive us all over Ontario, taking us here, taking us there, from the time I was pee-wee till I was about midget. And I really, that's something that I appreciate to this day. They didn't have to do that. But nowadays it's all, you pay for everything. At that time I didn't pay a cent. Had to buy my hockey sticks and my skates, but at the time, these guys drove us all over Ontario. Every year, weekend after weekend. Tournaments here, tournaments there. But totally enjoyable. Life in a small town.
Doris just asked what organizations Mum belonged to, and I can remember, before she was married, she was in the Women's Institute in Havelock, and then when she came to Lakefield, of course, she was in the UCW at the church, and she was very active in the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association at the schools. She was always having meetings at our house for that, because I remember she used to teach Bruce and Keith and I songs that we used to entertain the ladies. And because Dad was in hockey and in scouting, Mom was also on the ladies auxiliary. Was that hockey or was that scouts or both? Probably both. Yeah. One year they even did a some kind of a dance group or something. What was that for? And
The auxiliary, we used to put on a show every spring
yeah.
for the auxiliary.
That was back in when we used to have the old town hall. And I was talking about Mom the other day about this, how the town hall, I can remember having dances there and we used to do our dance recitals there. We used to have a big Halloween party there.
They used to have shows there in the
Movies.
weekends, yeah.
Bingo.
Bingo, yeah.
Where was this?
In Memorial Hall.
Yeah,
Upstairs.
upstairs. Yeah,
Oh,
because
at
the
the
library,
lecture.
yeah,
Oh,
because the
at the
library was,
library.
yeah, the library was downstairs. And,
Yeah, I've been in the library, been upstairs over the town hall.
It was at the
Yeah.
end.
yeah, it
Where
was
reading
too, yeah,
classes is.
yeah. That was back in the day when the town hall, like Harry Hill was the clerk, and he looked after everything. And, I mean, now they have a whole staff, who do the same, look after the same amount of people, but,
When my parents bought 33 Nelson Street, which was the Payne's first Lakefield house, my father wanted to put on an addition. He went to Harry Hill and asked if he might build the addition. Harry looked at him and said, "Do you own the house?" "Yes." "Do you own the land?" "Yes." "Well, do what you like then."
Oh, I love that.
Those were the days, eh? Those were the days.
Does everyone know that Eva Hill passed away this morning?
That Harry's wife?
Yeah.
Did you all hear that?
Not quite.
That Harry Hill's wife died this morning.
Oh.
Eva.
Eva.
You see tonight in the paper, Ken Morris died.
Yeah,
Saw that in the paper today.
Today.
but there's no funeral arrangements till next week, they said, for Eva.
Yeah.
She has relatives coming from Vancouver.
We've grown a lot bigger, but we grow smaller all the time.
There's still babies being born, right? What about the school? Did you go to the old school on the Hilbert?
Yep. We walked.
we had to come home for lunch. They didn't
I
allow
know.
village kids to stay at school, so we had
Never.
to go all the way home for lunch. and then back.
But you had an hour and a half for lunch, didn't you?
No, I think
No,
just an hour
Oh.
to run home. But we were talking about the bridges, how the steel bridge, and I can remember being a steel bridge, because I remember putting my tongue on it one time. Yeah.
But you didn't do it this morning.
No, I remember we jumped off it though.
Yeah. Both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to jump off it. Yeah, I remember when I was 13 years old, I guess at the time, maybe 14. I took my hunter safety training course at George Davies Marina on Water Street. And then I used to, a buddy of mine, Brian Cook, his father, Carl, bought the hardware store from Archie Stewart. And I used to take my gun, it was just a .22, but I used to take my gun,